Good afternoon and welcome back to the workbench. Today I'm going to do a video, quick one, on dodgy main cables and bad quality stuff, and just the safety, well, the non-safety of these, the dangerousness of them, the problem. Now, this topic has been done by other people before. Specifically, I think a guy called John Ward. He's got quite a few videos on these crappy mains cables. And his ones are quite good, but I figured, well, I might as well do one too, because, well, you know, why not? It's an important issue that I think needs to be brought to attention, and more people that talk about it, the better, because it really is an issue. Now, this particular cable, obviously, I've cut it into pieces. I was going to use it as a mains lead for something else, and that is how I actually discovered that this one was, in fact, a piece of garbage. I had wanted to wire up a transformer, and I just quickly wanted, you know, a mains plug with some cable on it to connect to a transformer for something I wanted to test out. And I dug this one out of a box, and I thought it'd be a perfect candidate, because plugging it in normally as it was, it didn't actually work at all. And I checked the connections, and I found that one of the leads was broken. I can't remember which one it was. I think it was, well, it was either live or neutral, obviously, but I forget which one specifically. But one of them was in fact broken. There was no connection between the two ends, and the lead didn't work. So I thought, okay, well, that's good. I can cut the socket off the end. I don't need that, and get myself some bare copper. I can just connect to my transformer, as you would. But it did show up to me, however, that this cable in fact was complete garbage. So I thought I'd do a quick video on that to show just how bad this is, basically, and why it's actually a pretty bad safety issue. So to start with, even from the outside, you can see that it's very low quality. If we look at the mains plug here on the side, you can see for a start that these pins are very rough. Sort of the moulding on these is not very good. You can see the edge has a significant sort of just rough edge. It's kind of bad. I mean, it's nothing major, but it does show that the overall quality is not very good. I mean, this should be all perfectly smooth. The earth pin is not bad, but the other two definitely have these rough sort of edges on there, and it's not, you know, it's either crap under the plating, or the whole thing is just badly moulded, whatever. So it's not a very good. It's not very good at all. The other thing you can see as well is if you hold it up this way, the actual pins are off center in the plug housing. They're kind of off to this top side here, closer to this side than this side. So, you know, it's very cheap, obviously. It's very bad sort of quality, and also the plastic molding. You know, this bit here, it's similar to the pins. It's got this sort of rough bit at the top there, and where the text, where you're supposed to be able to see this text, it says made in China there at the bottom. Then the text below that is sort of obscured by this rough patch. So the moulding is, and in the center there, in the middle of the pins, you can also see sort of a patch where it's all quite sort of crusty. So yeah, it's not a very good plug. It's off center. The mold is not very good quality. The pins are not very good quality. I mean, I don't know if these are plated, and if they are plated, you know, what actual metal are they using? It may not be very good either. It could be rust under the plating. That might be what's doing those lumps. It might be just steel or something, and it's, you know, they've just plated over rust bits or something. Could be anything, really. You never know. And especially also, it's even worse if you start looking at the cable here. So I mean, this is not even the correct color coding for this type of plug. This is an Australia-New Zealand plug, and this should have 3 wires: blue, brown, and green and yellow striped for the earth. But they don't have that at all. They've got one blue, and then the other two are black. So they've got one color correct. But the rest are all wrong, and it's even funnier if you actually look at the way they've pinned this out. So I'll just bring this multimeter in, Let's put on resistance measurement here, and I can check these here. So we got a live pin there. That should connect to a brown, if there's a brown here, but there isn't. And if we check this black one, no, it actually connects to one of these black wires here. So that's no good. And if we check the neutral pin, that actually connects to the other black wire. So the ground is blue, and blue is supposed to be neutral. So yeah, I mean, I'm holding that on the ground there. You can see it's I mean, yeah, it's just a joke. The color coding is all wrong. A few I mean, I suppose it's acceptable. I mean, I say acceptable. It's good in the sense that the color is completely wrong. It would be worse. It'd be far worse if the colors were all correct, but the pin assignments were incorrect for the colors. Like I said, live, which is this pin here, that should be brown. This one, neutral, should be blue, and earth should be yellow and green. That's what it should be. So if they used the correct colors but had them wired incorrectly, that would be a really big safety issue. But fortunately, they haven't done that, at least. So you know, if someone did want to rewire this cable, if the plug was damaged or something, then at least the completely wrong color code would at least alert you to the fact that something's not right. And you'd check with the other end and find out what the pinout is on here, and you'd be able to make sure you got the colours matched up to the right pins, at least, even if the colours aren't actually the right colours. So there's that, but you know, that's still a safety issue, but it's not that bad if you think about it. And if you were desperate, you needed a cable and you had to rewire this with a new plug for some reason, you know, you could get away with it, it'd work. But what's worse, though, if we compare this to a correct piece of cable, I'll just get this out of the way. This is a correct piece of mains cable, 10 amp, 250 volts rated. Now, the thing with this plug is it's rated somewhere on here. If we have a look, see if I can find it. It does say, where is it? Oh, yeah, in the middle. In the middle there it says 10 amps, 250 volts. You can see that. Just above the earth pin there. 10 amps, 250 volts. And I mean, going by the size of these conductors and everything, the pins, it probably would do 10 amps at 250 volts. Same with the other end. This is also rated 10 amps, 250 volts, and it's probably fine. But the problem isn't really the plugs, even though they are a bit low quality. The plugs themselves are probably okay, but the cable inside is what's really the problem. Now, this has no particular obvious rating on it. It just says, what does it say? PVC, some kind of thing. It says 300, 500 volts, so that's probably 300 volts AC, 500 volts DC. I don't know whether this would actually do that or not. I mean, this cable, I have used this cable, and it worked for what it was using. And it didn't break down or anything, so I would say the voltage rating at least can handle, 250 volts AC. Whether or not it could do 300 or that, we don't know, but probably you could say it's probably good enough for that. But what is bad about it, though, is the actual material they've used for the sleeving. It's really easy to tear. I can just tear this off with my fingers, basically. It's like tearing cardboard, really. It's very, very easy to tear open. So that's if you got this hooked on a sharp edge of a table or something, it could actually tear open really easily. So that's really bad. The insulation is terrible strength to it. It's not very good. The outer shell is really bad. It should be a lot tougher than that. The cables themselves, I don't know about the insulation there. It seems fairly decent, but it's the wrong colour, so But anyway, if we take a closer look at the actual conductor, the wire inside, this is where things get really bad. So you can see they're nice and shiny, at least. You should be able to see that. They are they're shiny, they're copper coloured, that's what you'd hope for, but when you go to twist them together, it's difficult to twist them together, so I would say these are not pure copper, or they're contaminated copper, recycled in some dodgy way, or most likely they're just copper coated aluminium or steel or something else, which is something they do with these really low quality cables. They don't use pure copper, they just use some sort of junk mixture and plate it with copper afterwards, as compared with this one. But the real issue here is the actual size of the conductors. If we compare this to the properly 10 amp rated cable, you can see the thickness of the good cable and the thickness of this crappy cable it's just a joke, really. I mean, this one is far thinner, and I mean, without even thinking, you can just look at this and you can say, well, if this is rated for 10 amps, how is this going to do 10 amps? It can't. I mean, it's so much thinner that, yeah, it's not going to happen, is it? It's just a joke. So I mean, we can take a measurement of this even to start off with. Got my calipers here. I mean, if I measure this conductor here, we get about, what do we get? Let's see if this thing will focus on it. We get about, 1 millimeter, 1 point, I don't know, about 1 millimeter thickness on this wire, which is pretty good. It's not accurate, obviously. I'm just measuring this. It's going to squash it a little bit. But it's about a millimeter. If we just use it as a comparison, it's about a millimeter to measure these ones. This one, on the other hand, measure this. It's coming up as about, well, 0.3, 0.32 or something. So it's about a third the thickness, and you can tell that just by looking at it anyway. I mean, these two sets of wires, I mean, it's just a joke, really, isn't it? It looks about a third the thickness, doesn't it? So with a quick measurement, we can say this one is 3 times thinner than this one. So how is this supposed to be able to handle the same amount of current as this? Well, obviously it doesn't. At a quick guess, obviously you'd say this one can only handle a third of the current of this one, so this one can only do about 3 amps. If this can do 10, this can do about 3, and keeping it safely within temperature. Basically, that's the sort of issue. I mean, you could pull 10 amps through this, that's possible, but you can't expect it to stay cool, and that's the issue. That's the main safety factor here. I mean, this one is correctly rated, it's correctly sized. You could pull 10 amps through this all day and there wouldn't be a problem. But you wired this up to a load that was drawing 10 amps, and you would see smoke and flames and things going on fire in short order. And that's the real big safety concern with these, is in fact, the plugs, both ends, they say 10 amps on them. So there's 10 amps there. Where was it? Yeah, I mean, this one says 10 amps. And so does this one. And, I mean, there you go, The cable doesn't say 10 amps on it, but the plugs, both of the plugs do. Anyone that's, if they wanted to use that for something that draws 10 amps, they're just going to plug it in, they're not going to know the difference, and it's going to catch on fire, basically. I mean, that's just what's going to happen. Because the conductors inside are so thin and terrible, they just overheat and burn up. And that's, so that's basically it, really. That's why these are really awful. I mean, notwithstanding the completely incorrect color code, the badly molded plugs, the shitty insulation that just, you can just tear this with your fingers. Just rip it in half. I mean, you could stand on this with your shoe and trip over it, and it could rip the thing open, and you get exposed cables. I don't know. I mean, I shouldn't be able to pull this in half with my hands. It just proves how bad this is. I should not be able to do this. Not this easily. It's possible with the other stuff to pull it like this, but it should be a lot more difficult. But this is just. It's just a joke, basically. It's just a joke. You shouldn't be able to pull this like this at all. So, I mean, there you go. It's just rubbish, complete rubbish. Yeah, what else is there to say? The only other obvious thing here, with this, for example, is the outer diameter. The outer diameter of this cable, for example, is, what is that? It's about 5 millimeters. And if we compare that with this one is 6.5 approximately. So I mean that this one is definitely thicker on the outside, and yeah, you can see the conductors are thicker. What's interesting though is that cable did come with this little power supply here. It's for powering an external hard drive enclosure, and if you look at the rating here, they claim it draws 1 amps from the mains. So you know, this cable here is, like I said, going by the size, it's probably do 3 amps at best. I'd downrate that to 2 just to be on the safe side. This claims it only draws 1, so you know, this cable worked fine with this power supply for a few years until the thing failed. But I mean, yeah, you know, you'd never know. Just using a little basic power supply like this is only going to draw a very low current, and this cable won't catch on fire if you only use it with this supply. But because it has a universal IEC plug on the end, you can plug it into anything. I could plug this into an electric kettle that draws 10 amps, and then this cable would just catch on fire. So, you know, it's just stupid. If this was permanently wired into this power supply, you know, that would be good. But yeah, I mean, even the rating on this is probably lies. It claims it can do 2 amps, both at 12 and 5 volts at the same time. But this thing is really light. There's also something rattling around inside it too. Probably a soldered blob or something. But yeah, I mean, that's I've got a decent 12 volt 3 amp power supply, which is about twice as heavy as this. So you know, that's going to be about the same wattage rating. If you take the combined one of these two, it'll come out to about, you know, 3 amps at 12 volts. But yeah, this thing maybe do 2 amp peak, but the rating on this, I'm sure, is basically lies as well. So the mains cable is lies, the rating on this is lies, and the rating on this power supply is lies. And yeah, I mean, cheap junk. It's all just full of lies. So yeah, might be interesting to open this up and have a look at it later on, but yeah, that's something else for another time. So there you go. That shows you just how bad a cheap, crappy mains cable really is, and just how this thing wouldn't pass any of the safety regulations whatsoever, because it's completely wrong coloured. The insulation is far too brittle and easy to tear, and the conductors are a third the size of what they should be, compared to this correctly coloured, correctly sized, and much tougher insulated cable. So I mean, this claims to be PVC. I don't even know if it is PVC. It could be just some sort of weird mixture of anything, really. It could be anything. It's not very good. So and of course the worst thing with this is at a quick glance from outside you can't really tell the difference. It's only slightly thinner on the outside, and the plugs are fairly decent just at a quick glance, so it's hard to tell. But I mean, you look closely, you can see the bad moulding marks, you can see the off-center pins, you can see the cable is thin. This also has kind of lumps up and down the insulation as well. So I mean, overall it doesn't look very good. With close inspection you can see kind of it's just not a clean cable. It just looks a bit off, and I guess that's kind of all you've really got to go on if you just want to look on the outside or something. But you know, if you get a cheap cable with a cheap power supply or cheap product, especially if you buy it directly from eBay or something, you could just direct import from China, they get to bypass all the safety regulations, so there's no one checking that the cables are actually correct. Whereas if you buy a product that is sold in your country it should be certified and everything done correctly. But yeah, if you are in any doubt, then just cut one of the ends off and have a look and see. But and there you go. Deadly cables. I mean, if you had this somewhere you didn't realise, you could potentially burn your house down and die, basically. So yeah, just good warning, don't use cheap cables. The only time I'd recommend using this would be if you're in the back blocks of east end of nowhere and you desperately need 10 amp cable to run something. You could get 3 of these, and if you paralleled all the strands from all these conductors together, that would give you 1 cable, and then do that with 3 of these, and you could use each of these for each pin. Then you'd at least probably get the power rating would be correct and the thing wouldn't catch on fire. But you know, unless you're in a really desperate situation like that, these things, yeah, just no. Best thing to do is just cut the plugs off, cut this up into little pieces and just dump it, throw it away. It's not worth it. It's not worth someone who doesn't know the difference getting their hands on it and burning their house down with it and dying. It's just not worth it at all. Or if you forget and use it yourself, and of course the color code is bad. You could wire new plugs on this and use it for a low current situation, but in the future someone else might get their hands on it and they have no idea what the color code is, and it's just not good. So yeah, many things wrong with this cable, and I would definitely going in the bin, unless I decide to stress test it first, and then it will definitely go in the bin because it'll probably will have caught on fire. So yeah, hopefully this video was informative. Hopefully it's a good reminder about safety, electrical safety, and just something else to look out for is bad cables that aren't rated anywhere near what they should be. And yeah, just have a look, make sure your cables are actually decent, and if you got any things like this, just chuck them away. There's no point keeping them. Just a safety hazard, just death trap basically. It's yeah, not good at all. So there we go. See you next time.